At the beginning, everything feels intense. A new idea, a new goal, a new person, a new skill. You feel motivated, focused, slightly obsessed. Your mind is full of possibilities. You imagine progress, transformation, a different version of yourself. And then, slowly, the energy fades. The excitement becomes neutral. The goal feels heavier. The conversations feel repetitive. The skill becomes effort instead of novelty. You start something new. Again, this pattern can make you question yourself. Why can't you stay consistent? Why does motivation disappear? Why does everything feel exciting at first and then flat? The answer isn't laziness. It's neurobiology. Your brain is highly sensitive to novelty. New stimuli trigger strong dopamine responses. But dopamine isn't pleasure, it's anticipation. It spikes when something feels uncertain, promising, or full of potential. At the beginning of anything, uncertainty is high. The brain predicts reward. It imagines outcomes. It fills gaps with possibility. Possibility is stimulating. But once the unknown becomes known, prediction stabilizes. The brain updates its model. The thing is no longer new. It's understood. And understood things require effort. The dopamine spike decreases not because the activity is bad, but because it's familiar. This is called novelty decay. Your brain evolved to prioritize exploration. In ancestral environments, exploring new resources increased survival. But once a resource became predictable, the brain shifted energy elsewhere. In modern life, this mechanism applies to projects, relationships, hobbies, even personal goals. You don't lose interest because you're incapable of depth. You lose interest because the reward system recalibrates. There's another layer, identity fantasy. When you start something new, you're not only engaging with the activity, you're engaging with the imagined version of yourself attached to it. If you start learning a language, you imagine being fluent. If you start working out, you imagine being transformed. If you meet someone new, you imagine emotional connection. The fantasy carries more dopamine than the process. When reality replaces fantasy, motivation shifts. The imagined identity becomes slower and more complex. Progress is gradual. Results are imperfect. The brain prefers clean narratives. Real growth is messy. Another factor is friction tolerance. At the beginning, motivation compensates for friction. But once novelty fades, friction becomes visible. The boring repetitions, the slow improvement, the uncertainty of long-term reward. If your system is calibrated to high stimulation, constant scrolling, fast content, quick feedback, slow progress feels underwhelming. Your attention becomes conditioned to intensity, and intensity is not sustainable. There's also emotional avoidance hidden inside fast loss of interest. Staying with one thing long enough means facing plateaus, facing boredom, facing self-doubt. When you move on quickly, you avoid confronting those phases. Switching keeps you in the excitement stage. You become addicted to beginnings. Beginnings are clean. They don't contain proof of limitation yet. But depth only appears after repetition. Another reason interest fades quickly is unclear internal motivation. If you start things because they look impressive, productive, or aligned with someone else's expectations, intrinsic engagement remains weak. External validation can initiate action, but it rarely sustains it. Without internal meaning, novelty is the only fuel, and novelty burns fast. So what changes this pattern? First, understand that loss of excitement is normal. Expecting constant intensity is unrealistic. Interest naturally moves from excitement to steadiness. If you interpret steadiness as boredom, you will abandon things too early. Second, separate stimulation from meaning. Something meaningful is not always stimulating. Sometimes meaning feels quiet, repetitive, stable. But stable doesn't mean empty. Third, build tolerance for the middle phase. The middle is where skill develops, where identity stabilizes, where results compound. It's less dramatic than the beginning, but more powerful long-term. Your nervous system needs practice staying engaged without novelty spikes. Fourth, reduce overstimulation elsewhere. If your brain is constantly fed rapid novelty through digital input, ordinary progress will always feel slow. Lowering external stimulation recalibrates your reward sensitivity. And finally, question what you're actually seeking. Is it mastery? Or is it the feeling of becoming someone new? If it's the second, you may not be chasing goals. You may be chasing identity shifts. And identity shifts don't require constant new projects. Sometimes they require finishing one. Losing interest quickly doesn't mean you lack discipline. It often means your brain is optimized for novelty and possibility. But possibility is infinite. Depth is chosen. And choosing depth means staying after the excitement fades. Because real change doesn't happen in the first surge of motivation. It happens in the quiet phase that follows.